The station hung in the black emptiness of space, like a city made of light. It was the largest thing humans had ever seen, bigger than any moon, covered with towers and domes and landing platforms. Ships from 100 different worlds came and went like insects around a hive. This was the seat of the Galactic Council, the place where the fate of civilizations was decided. Catherine Moore pressed her hand against the cold window of the human transport ship and watched the station grow larger. She was 50 years old, with tired eyes and gray hair that she kept tied back in a simple knot. For 20 years she had worked as a diplomat on Earth, solving problems between countries that hated each other. She thought that work was hard. She had no idea what hard really meant until now. Behind her, the rest of the human delegation prepared for arrival. There were 12 of them in total. Scientists, translators, military advisors, and politicians. The best humanity had to offer, chosen to represent their entire species before the council. None of them had slept well during the long journey. None of them could stop thinking about what waited for them. Commander Samuel Price walked up and stood beside Catherine. He was 60 years old, a soldier who had spent his life protecting people. His hair was white now, and his face was lined with scars from old battles, but his eyes were still sharp and clear. He had been assigned to keep the delegation safe. Both he and Catherine knew that if the council decided to harm them, there was nothing he could do about it. "How are you feeling?" Samuel asked. Catherine did not take her eyes off the approaching station. "Scared, excited, mostly scared. That makes two of us." The ship entered the station's docking bay through a massive opening in the outer hull. Catherine felt a gentle bump as they landed. Through the window, she could see dozens of alien ships parked in rows. Some were beautiful, with smooth curves and glowing lights. Others were ugly, covered with spikes and strange growths. All of them were beyond anything human engineers had ever built. The delegation gathered at the ship's main door. Catherine stood at the front, trying to look confident, even though her heart was beating so fast she thought it might burst. The door opened with a soft hiss, and they stepped out onto alien ground for the first time. The air smelled wrong. It was clean and fresh, but there was something underneath that made Catherine's nose itch. Strange chemicals, alien plants, the breath of creatures from distant stars. She forced herself to ignore it and kept walking. Their guide was waiting for them. It was a creature that looked like a tall, thin stick insect, with 4 long legs and 2 arms that ended in delicate fingers. Its head was small, with large black eyes that reflected Catherine's face back at her. "Welcome to the council station," the creature said. Its voice was translated by the small device in Catherine's ear, turning alien sounds into English words. "I am coordinator this. I will take you to the Great Chamber." They followed this through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Catherine saw aliens of every shape and size. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others crawled on many legs or floated through the air or rolled along the floor. A few had no visible bodies at all, just clouds of colored light that moved with purpose. Every single one of them stopped to stare at the humans as they passed. The Great Chamber was beyond anything Catherine had imagined. It was shaped like a bowl, with seats rising up in circles around a central platform. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared into darkness, dotted with lights that looked like stars. Thousands of aliens filled the seats, watching the humans enter with expressions that ranged from curiosity to disgust. At the top of the chamber, on a platform that floated above everything else, sat the High Arbiter. Zethkel was his name, and he was the leader of the council. His body was made of clear flesh that you could see through, like a jellyfish given human form. He had many arms and many eyes, and all of those eyes were focused on Catherine as she walked toward the central platform. "The species known as humanity may approach," Zethkel announced. His voice filled the chamber, translated into 100 languages at once. Catherine climbed the steps to the platform and faced the assembled council. She had prepared a speech, memorized every word, practiced until she could say it in her sleep. Now, standing here, all of those words seemed small and foolish. "We thank the council for this opportunity," she said. "Humanity comes in peace, seeking friendship and partnership with the civilized species of the galaxy." Silence followed her words. Then, from somewhere in the upper seats, an alien laughed. It was a harsh barking sound that echoed through the chamber. Others joined in. Soon it seemed like the whole council was laughing at her. Zethkel raised one of his many arms, and the laughter stopped. Humanity's request for membership has been received. However, before we proceed, certain matters must be addressed. A holographic image appeared above Catherine's head. She looked up and felt her stomach turn cold. It showed Earth, her beautiful blue home, and then it showed wars. Bombs falling on cities. Soldiers killing each other in muddy trenches. Nuclear explosions turning the sky to fire. All of humanity's worst moments displayed for the galaxy to see. Your species has a troubling history, Zethkel said. You fight among yourselves constantly. You destroy your own world with pollution and weapons. You seem incapable of living in peace even with your own kind. The Council must ask, why should we trust you with access to galactic technology and travel? Catherine felt anger rising in her chest, but she pushed it down. Every species has darkness in its past, she said. We do not deny what we have done. We learn from it. That is what makes us human. Pretty words, said a voice from the side of the chamber. Catherine turned to see a reptilian creature with green scales and sharp teeth standing up from its seat. I am Ambassador Krethos of the Crethenori. My people have watched humanity for many years. We have seen your wars, your cruelty, your endless hunger for resources. You are not ready to join civilized society. Perhaps you never will be. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Catherine felt Samuel tense beside her, ready to defend her honor, even though they both knew it would be suicide to start a fight here. We ask only for a fair chance, Catherine said. Judge us by who we are now, not by who we were in the past. Zethkel's many eyes blinked slowly. The council will consider your words. A decision will be made in time. This hearing is concluded for today. Catherine bowed her head and led her delegation out of the chamber. As she walked through the massive doors, she could hear aliens whispering behind her. Her translator caught fragments of their conversations. Words like primitives and dangerous and should be destroyed echoed in her ear. When they reached their quarters on the station, that could have gone better. It could have been much worse, Catherine replied. At least they did not throw us out immediately. They were laughing at us, I know. Catherine sat down heavily on a chair and rubbed her tired eyes. But we are here. We have a chance. That is more than anyone expected. She looked out the window at the endless stars and wondered what the future would bring. Humanity had come so far, crossed such vast distances, only to be laughed at by creatures who thought themselves superior. It hurt more than she had expected, but Catherine Moore was not the kind of woman who gave up easily. She had fought too many battles, overcome too many obstacles, to let a room full of arrogant aliens defeat her. Humanity would prove itself. It might take time, it might take sacrifice, but they would show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. She just hoped the council would give them the chance to try. 8 months passed on the council station. 8 months of waiting, of answering questions, of being poked and studied like animals in a zoo. Catherine had expected the process to be slow, but this was something different. This was deliberate torture. Every day brought new tests. Alien doctors examined human bodies and made disapproving sounds. Alien psychologists asked questions about human emotions and wrote notes in languages Catherine could not read. Alien historians demanded explanations for every war, every conflict, every cruel thing humans had ever done to each other. Catherine answered everything honestly. She did not try to hide humanity's flaws or make excuses for their mistakes. She believed that honesty would earn respect. She was wrong. The aliens were not interested in the truth. They had already decided what humans were. Every answer Catherine gave was twisted to fit their beliefs. When she talked about human kindness, they said it was a trick. When she showed evidence of human progress, they said it was temporary. When she pointed out that humans had stopped fighting among themselves, they said it would not last. Samuel Price spent his days walking through the station, talking to whoever would listen. Most aliens avoided him, but a few were willing to exchange words. The Velthari, a species of tall beings with blue skin and gentle eyes, seemed sympathetic to humanity's situation. Their ambassador, a female named Selena, told Samuel that not everyone on the council agreed with the senior species. "There are many of us who believe the council has become unfair," Selena said during one of their secret meetings. "The Nethrani and the Krethenari control everything. They decide who gets to join, who gets to trade, who gets to live, and who gets to die. We younger species have no real voice." "Then why do you not speak up?" Samuel asked. Selena's blue face showed something like fear. "Because those who speak against the council tend to disappear. Their worlds face economic punishment. Their ships are denied access to important trade routes. It is easier to stay quiet and survive than to fight and be destroyed." Samuel reported this conversation to Catherine. She filed the information away in her mind, wondering if it might be useful someday. For now, she had to focus on the immediate problem, convincing the council to accept humanity. The day of the final decision arrived on a gray morning. Catherine woke early and dressed in her finest clothes. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw an old woman with tired eyes staring back. She had given everything she had to this mission. Today, she would learn if it was enough. The great chamber was packed even tighter than before. News had spread that humanity's fate would be decided, and aliens from across the galaxy had come to watch. Catherine led her delegation down the central aisle, feeling thousands of eyes upon her with every step. Zethkel sat on his floating platform, his translucent body glowing softly in the chamber's light. Ambassador Kratos of the Krethenori sat nearby, his scaled face twisted in an expression of satisfaction. Catherine knew before anyone spoke what the decision would be. Ambassador Zethkel began. "The council has completed its evaluation of humanity. We have studied your species carefully. We have considered all evidence. A decision has been reached." Catherine stepped forward. "We await your judgment, High Arbiter."
Right.
"The council has decided that humanity is not ready for full membership." Zethkel's voice showed no emotion, as if he were reading a weather report. "Your species has potential, but your violent history and aggressive nature make you a danger to galactic peace." The words hit Catherine like blows from a hammer. She had expected this, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way that hurt deep in her chest. "Humanity will be granted provisional status," Zethkel continued. "This means limited trade with approved species only. Your ships will be restricted to your home system and designated travel corridors. Council observers will visit your worlds once each year to ensure compliance. These conditions will remain in place for 500 standard years. After that time, humanity may request a new evaluation." 500 years. Catherine did the math in her head. 20 generations of humans would live and die under these restrictions. Her great-grandchildren would still be waiting for the council to decide if they were worthy of freedom. "High Arbiter," she said, keeping her voice steady with great effort. "Humanity has already built colonies throughout our solar system. Our population is growing faster than our home world can support. The restrictions you propose would condemn millions of our people to poverty and death." "Then you must learn to control your growth," said Ambassador Kratos, his teeth showing in what might have been a smile. "Other species have faced similar challenges. They adapted. Those who could not adapt died. That is the natural order of things." Samuel stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. "You are sentencing our people to slow death. How is that justice?" "Silence," Zethkel commanded. "The decision is final. Humanity may appeal after the provisional period has ended. This hearing is concluded." Catherine watched as the senior representatives began leaving their seats. Some of them glanced at the humans with expressions of pity. Others showed contempt, pleased to see the young species put in their proper place. Kratos walked past the human delegation and made a hissing sound that Catherine's translator interpreted as mocking laughter. When the chamber was nearly empty, Zethkel floated down from his platform and approached Catherine. Up close, she could see the complex patterns of light that moved through his transparent body. He was beautiful in an alien way and completely without mercy. "Ambassador Moore," he said quietly, "you handled yourself with dignity." "That is noted, but it changes nothing," Catherine replied. Nothing. Zethkal paused. I would advise your people to accept these terms without complaint. The Council does not respond well to defiance. Species that have challenged our decisions in the past have suffered greatly. Is that a threat? It is advice from someone who has seen many young species make the same mistake. Zethkal began floating back toward the exit. Humanity has a choice. Accept your place and survive, or fight and be destroyed. I hope you choose wisely. Catherine led her delegation out of the chamber in silence. When they reached their quarters, Daniel Cooper, the youngest member of the team, finally spoke. What do we do now? Catherine looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, waiting to hear its fate. Millions of people hoping for good news, about to receive the worst news of their lives. We go home, she said. We tell our people what happened, and then we decide what kind of species we want to be.
Oh, what do you mean?
Catherine turned to face her team. The Council has given us a choice. Submit and survive, or fight and be destroyed. But there is a third option they did not mention. What option? We refuse to accept their terms. We refuse to fight on their schedule. We wait, we grow stronger, we find allies among the other oppressed species. And when the time is right, we change everything. It was a dangerous idea. It might take years, even decades, to achieve. But as Catherine looked at the faces of her team, she saw something that gave her hope. She saw determination. She saw anger. She saw people who were not willing to accept the place the Council had chosen for them. Humanity had been told they were too violent, too aggressive, too dangerous to be trusted. Very well. The Council would learn just how dangerous humanity could be when pushed to. For years had passed since the Council's decision. Catherine Moore was back on Earth, living alone in a small apartment in New York City. The government had removed her from the diplomatic service 6 months after she returned home. They said they needed new voices, fresh perspectives. The truth was that they blamed her for failing to win humanity's freedom. Even though no one could have done better, she spent her days reading news reports and watching video feeds from the colonies. The situation was getting worse every month. The Council's restrictions were strangling humanity like a rope around the neck. Without access to alien technology, diseases that could have been cured killed thousands of people. Without freedom to travel, colonists on distant worlds ran out of supplies and starved. The protests on Earth had become violent. People marched through the streets demanding action. Some called for war against the Council. Others wanted the government to accept the restrictions and make the best of a bad situation. Fights broke out between the two groups. Police struggled to maintain order. Catherine watched it all from her window, feeling helpless and old. Then came the news from Kepler. Kepler-44 to be. Was a beautiful world with green forests and blue oceans. Located far from Earth in a distant corner of the galaxy, 2,000 human colonists had traveled there years before first contact with the Council. They had built homes, planted crops, raised children. It was their world, earned through hard work and sacrifice. The Council decided that Kepler-44 to be was inside territory claimed by the Crethenori. They ordered the colonists to leave, to abandon everything they had built and relocate to a different world. The colonists refused. They had been there first. They had earned the right to stay. The Crethenori sent a fleet. Catherine watched the video feeds with horror as the events unfolded. The alien ships surrounded the planet and established a blockade. No vessels were allowed in or out. Supply ships from Earth that tried to break through were destroyed without warning. The colonists sent desperate messages, broadcast to anyone who would listen. They were running out of food. Medicine was gone. People were getting sick and dying. Children were crying from hunger. They begged for help that never came. The blockade lasted 7 months. By the end, more than half the colonists were dead. The survivors, weak and broken, finally surrendered. Crethenori soldiers landed on the surface and forced the remaining humans onto transport ships. They were taken to a barren moon at the edge of human space and dumped there with nothing but basic supplies. Then the Crethenori destroyed everything the colonists had built. Every house, every farm, every road. They burned the forests the humans had planted and poisoned the lakes the humans had swam in. When they were finished, no trace of human presence remained on Kepler-4 for 2b. The reaction on Earth was immediate and explosive. Millions of people took to the streets in every major city. The government declared a state of emergency. Military leaders demanded the construction of new warships to defend against future attacks. Scientists abandoned their normal work to focus on weapons development. Catherine received a call from Daniel Cooper 3 weeks after the Kepler massacre. Daniel had replaced her as the leader of the human delegation on the council station. His face on the video screen looked thin and exhausted, like a man who had not slept in months. "The council is demanding an apology," Daniel said. "They want humanity to officially admit that the Kepler colonists were criminals who violated Crethenori territory." Catherine felt rage building in her chest. "Those people were there before we knew the council existed. How can they call them criminals?" "I told them that. They do not care." Daniel rubbed his eyes tiredly. "There is worse news. The council is proposing additional restrictions. They want us to reduce our fleet to almost nothing. They want permanent observer stations in every human colony. They want the right to approve all our research projects. That is not membership in a community. That is slavery." "I know." Daniel leaned closer to the camera and lowered his voice. "Catherine, something is happening. I've been meeting secretly with representatives from other species. The Velthari, the Morvani, others. They are angry about what happened at Kepler. They say the council has gone too far." Catherine felt a spark of hope for the first time in years. "What are they saying?" "They want to form an alliance. A group of species that will stand together against the senior races. They say humanity's defiance at the original hearing inspired them to believe that change is possible." Daniel glanced over his shoulder nervously. "They want you to come back. They want to talk to you specifically." "Why me?" "I failed. You stood up in front of the entire council and spoke the truth. You did not bow, you did not beg, you did not accept their judgment quietly. That meant something to the younger species. They remember." Catherine thought about the dead colonists at Kepler. She thought about the children who had starved while the council did nothing. She thought about 500 years of humiliation and restriction, generation after generation treated like dangerous animals. "Tell them I will come," she said. "Tell them humanity will not forget what was done to us. One way or another, things are going to change." 2 months later, Catherine boarded a transport ship and began the long journey back to the council station. She was not going as an ambassador this time. She was going as something different, something the council had not seen in a very long time. She was going as a revolutionary. The ship carried her through the darkness between stars, past distant suns and alien worlds. She spent the journey reading reports and planning strategy. The alliance that Daniel had described was still fragile, held together by shared anger more than shared goals. It would need careful leadership to become something real. But Catherine had spent her entire life building coalitions, finding common ground between enemies, turning weakness into strength. If anyone could forge these scattered species into a force that could challenge the council, it was her. She looked out the window at the endless stars and smiled grimly. The council had called humanity primitive and dangerous. They had laughed at human hopes and crushed human dreams. They had murdered innocent people and demanded apologies for the crime. Now, they would learn what happened when you pushed primitives too far. Now they would discover just how dangerous humanity could truly be. The galaxy was about to change, and Catherine Moore was going to light the fire. The council chamber was more crowded than Catherine had ever seen it. Every seat was filled, and aliens stood in the aisles and pressed against the walls. News had spread across the galaxy that humanity was going to respond to the council's demands. Everyone wanted to witness what would happen next. Catherine stood at the entrance to the chamber, looking out at the sea of alien faces. Samuel Price stood on her right, his white hair neatly combed and his military uniform perfect. Daniel Cooper stood on her left, younger but no less determined. Behind them, 15 other humans waited in silence. They were diplomats, soldiers, scientists, the best their species had to offer. "Are you ready?" Samuel asked quietly. Catherine took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "I have been ready for 4 years." They walked forward. The central aisle seemed longer than Catherine remembered. Each step brought them closer to the raised platform where speakers addressed the council. Thousands of alien eyes followed their progress. Some showed curiosity, others showed contempt. A few showed something that might have been hope. Catherine noticed the Velthary ambassador watching her from the upper seats. Selena gave the smallest possible nod, so quick that anyone not looking for it would have missed it. Catherine understood. Their allies were in place. The plan was moving forward. High Arbiter Zethkal called the chamber to order. His translucent body glowed softly on his floating platform, and his many eyes were fixed on Catherine with an expression she could not read. "The delegation from Earth has requested this assembly to deliver humanity's response to recent council proposals. Ambassador Moore, you may speak." Catherine climbed the steps to the central platform. The lights of the chamber shone down on her, making her the center of attention for thousands of beings from across the galaxy. She had practiced this speech 100 times. She knew every word by heart. But speaking those words here, now, felt different. This was real. This was history. "High Arbiter, honored representatives," she began. Her voice was steady and clear, amplified by the chamber's systems, so that every alien could hear. "I speak today for all humanity. Our species has spent 4 years living under the Council's restrictions. We have suffered, we have struggled, we have watched our people die." She paused, letting the silence build. "The colonists of Kepler 442b were murdered. That is not too strong a word. They were surrounded, starved, and killed by Crethenori forces acting with the Council's approval. More than 1,000 innocent people, including children, died because the Council decided that human lives were worth less than alien territorial claims." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Catherine raised her hand and the noise subsided. "And now the Council demands an apology. You want us to say that our people were criminals, that they deserved to die, that the Crethenori were right to murder them? You want us to accept new restrictions that would reduce us to slaves in everything but name." Ambassador Krethos of the Crethenori stood up from his seat. His green scales shimmered with anger. "This is outrageous. The Council will not tolerate insults from primitives." Catherine turned to face him directly. "You call us primitives. But we built starships with no help from you. We crossed the galaxy using technology we invented ourselves. What we lack is not ability or intelligence. What we lack is the thousands of years that you have had to develop." She turned back to the full chamber. "The Council judges humanity by our past mistakes while ignoring your own crimes. The Nethrani destroyed 3 species during their rise to power. The Crethenori have committed genocide twice in the last 1,000 years. Yet you sit in judgment of us, calling us too violent, too dangerous, too primitive to be trusted." The chamber erupted in noise. Aliens shouted at each other and at the humans. Security guards began moving toward the platform. Zethkal demanded silence, his voice barely audible above the chaos. Catherine stood perfectly still in the center of the storm. She did not flinch, did not retreat, did not show any fear. Slowly, the chamber quieted. Even the most hostile aliens wanted to hear what she would say next. Humanity came to this council seeking friendship. We were willing to learn, to grow, to become part of the galactic community. We asked for nothing but a fair chance. Catherine's voice grew harder with each word. Instead, we were mocked, tested, judged, and condemned. Our people were murdered, and we were told to apologize for the crime. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small crystal that glowed with soft blue light. This crystal contains humanity's official response to the Council's demands. I will tell you what it says. Catherine held the crystal high above her head so everyone could see it. We reject your demand for an apology. We reject your restrictions on our ships. We reject observer stations in our colonies. We reject your authority over our research. We reject everything you have tried to force upon us. She dropped the crystal on the platform floor. It shattered into 1,000 tiny pieces that scattered across the stone. Humanity hereby withdraws its petition for council membership. We do not recognize your right to rule over human space. We do not accept your laws, your judgments, or your decisions. From this moment forward, any attempt to enforce your will on our people will be considered an act of war. The chamber exploded into chaos. Aliens screamed and pushed toward the exits or toward the platform. Security guards rushed forward with weapons drawn. Zethkal's voice boomed through the speakers, demanding order, threatening consequences, calling for the humans to be arrested. Catherine turned her back on all of it. She walked down the steps from the platform and headed toward the exit. Samuel and Daniel fell into step beside her. The rest of the human delegation followed without hesitation. Aliens blocked their path. Security guards pointed weapons at them. Catherine kept walking. She did not slow down, did not speed up, did not show any sign of fear or doubt. "Move," Samuel said quietly to the guards. There was something in his voice, a promise of violence so certain that it needed no threats. The guards looked at each other, then stepped aside. The massive doors of the chamber opened before them. Catherine led her people through, walking with her head held high. Behind her, the Galactic Council watched in horror as humans stormed out of the chamber. Thousands of years of tradition, of hierarchy, of unquestioned authority had just been challenged by a species that was supposed to be primitive and weak. Catherine did not look back. She did not need to. She knew that everything had changed in that moment. There was no going back now. Humanity had made its choice. Now they would see if they could survive the consequences. As she walked through the station's corridors toward the human ships, Catherine felt something she had not felt in years. It was not hope exactly, not yet. But it was the possibility of hope. The first step on a very long and dangerous road. The galaxy would never be the same. And neither would humanity. The news of humanity's walkout spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every world with communications technology heard about it within days. The Council had ruled civilized space for 12,000 years. No species had ever defied them so openly, so completely, so publicly. The humans had not just refused to obey. They had rejected the Council's right to give orders at all. The senior species reacted with fury. The Krethnori demanded immediate military action against. Earth Ambassador Krethos gave speeches calling for human colonies to be burned and human ships to be destroyed. The Nethrani were more cautious, but even High Arbiter Zethkal spoke of consequences that would teach humanity its proper place. Then the unexpected happened. 3 weeks after the walkout, the Velthari ambassador stood up in the council chamber and announced that her species was reviewing its own membership terms. She spoke of unfair treatment, of decisions made without consultation, of younger species being ignored while the senior races did whatever they wanted. She called humanity's defiance brave and necessary. The council threatened the Velthari with sanctions. The Velthari responded by formally withdrawing from membership, just as humanity had done. The Morvani followed within a week. Then the Teleshi, a small but respected species known for their scientific achievements. Then the Corvin, who had complained about council restrictions for centuries. Then a dozen more species, one after another, each declaring that the old order was broken and needed to be replaced. Catherine Moore found herself at the center of something she could never have imagined. The Earth government appointed her as chief negotiator for what people were calling the Alliance of Free Worlds. Every day brought new messages from species wanting to join. Every night brought meetings and arguments about what kind of organization they were building. The council tried to crush the rebellion before it could grow stronger. They sent a massive fleet to blockade human space, planning to starve Earth into submission the same way they had starved Kepler. But humanity had learned from that horror. The military buildup that had begun in secret was now revealed in full force. Human warships met the Council fleet at the edge of the solar system. The aliens expected easy victory. They had better technology, more ships, thousands of years of experience. What they did not have was human creativity, human determination, and human rage. The Battle of Saturn's Gate lasted 5 days. When it ended, The Council had lost more ships than in the previous century combined. The blockade was broken. Human space remained free. More victories followed as Alliance forces pushed back against the Council across the galaxy. Human tactics combined with alien technology created a military force unlike anything the senior species had ever faced. Worlds that had been loyal to the Council for millennia declared their independence and joined the Alliance. 18 months after the walkout, High Arbiter Zethkal sent a secret message to Catherine requesting a meeting. She agreed, curious about what he wanted. They met on a small space station in neutral territory. Far from any witnesses, Zethkal looked different than she remembered. His translucent body was clouded and dark, and he moved slowly like an old man carrying a heavy burden. The war had aged him terribly, Ambassador Moore, he said, settling into a seat across from her. Thank you for agreeing to see me. High Arbiter. Catherine kept her face neutral. I admit I was surprised by your request. I imagine you were. Zethkal's many eyes studied her face. I warned you when this began that defiance would have consequences. I told you that species who challenged the Council had suffered in the past, I remember. I was not lying. The Council has destroyed civilizations for less than what humanity has done. Zethkal made a sound that might have been a sigh. And yet here we are. Your alliance grows stronger, while our authority crumbles. Everything we've built over 12,000 years is falling apart. Catherine remained silent, waiting. What do you want? Zethkal asked. What must happen for this war to end? Catherine had thought about this question many times. She had discussed it with alliance leaders, argued with generals, debated with politicians. A consensus had formed, and she was ready to speak it. We want a new council, she said. One where every species has an equal voice, not just the senior races. Where decisions are made together by agreement, not forced on the weak by the powerful. Where no species is called primitive simply because they are young, the Nethrani will never agree to give up power. Then they can keep fighting a war they are losing. Catherine leaned forward. The old order is dead, High Arbiter. The only question is whether something better will replace it, or whether the galaxy will fall into chaos. Zethkal was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than Catherine had ever heard it. I have led the Council for 300 years. I believed that our way was right, that we maintained order and guided younger species toward wisdom. But I watched what we did to your people at Kepler. I heard my colleagues laugh at human suffering. I saw the arrogance that blinds them to their own cruelty. He raised one of his many limbs in a gesture of defeat. Perhaps we became the very thing we were meant to prevent. Catherine extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Help us build something better. Use your influence to end the fighting. The galaxy does not have to be ruled by fear and force. Zethkal stared at her hand for a long time. Then, slowly, he reached out and clasped it with one of his own limbs. The war did not end that day. It took another 2 years of fighting and negotiating before a final treaty was signed. But historians would later point to that secret meeting as the turning point. That was when the old order truly began to die. The new council was established on the anniversary of humanity's walkout. Representatives from every member species gathered in a chamber specifically designed to show equality rather than hierarchy. There were no floating platforms, no special seats for senior races. Everyone stood together as equals. Catherine Moore was asked to give the opening speech. She was old now, her hair completely white, her face lined with wrinkles earned through decades of struggle. But her voice was still strong, and her eyes still burned with the fire that had carried her through everything. We gather here today not as rulers and subjects, but as partners, she said. We come from different worlds, different histories, different ways of thinking, but we share a common belief that every species deserves the chance to grow, to learn to become something greater than they were born. She paused. Looking out at the assembled representatives, humanity was told that we were too violent, too primitive, too dangerous to be trusted. Perhaps that was true once, but we have proven that we can change. We can learn from our mistakes. We can turn our greatest weakness into our greatest strength. That is what it means to be human. That is what we offer to this new community. the chamber filled with applause from 100 different species. Catherine smiled, feeling tears forming in her eyes. She thought about everyone who had brought them to this moment. Samuel Price, who had stood beside her through everything and died peacefully 3 years ago. Daniel Cooper, who now served as humanity's chief ambassador. The colonists of Kepler, whose sacrifice had awakened the galaxy to the Council's injustice. And countless others, named and unnamed, who had fought and struggled and refused to give up. The galaxy would never be the same. What had begun with humanity being laughed at in the council chamber had ended with a new order built on equality and respect. It had taken years of suffering, years of war, years of desperate hope, but they had done it. Catherine Moore walked out of the chamber into the light of a new dawn. Behind her, the representatives of a free galaxy began the work of building a better future. Ahead of her stretched the stars no longer forbidden. It's no longer controlled by those who thought themselves superior. Humanity had stormed out of the old council in anger and defiance. Now they walked into the new one as founders and partners. That was what happened when you pushed humans too far. That was what happened when you underestimated what a so-called primitive species could achieve. The galaxy had learned its lesson. It would not forget.